The Los Angeles Forum, February 1991. 18,000 seats filled from the floor to the upper rafters, the air inside thick with the kind of noise that belongs only to arenas built for spectacle. The occasion was a charity martial arts exhibition, the third of its kind that decade, organized by a Veterans Relief Foundation that had quietly grown into one of the largest events of its kind in California. The house lights had not yet dimmed. People were still finding their rows, still pressing coats into overhead racks, still settling in the particular way crowds settle before they understand what they are about to see. Steven Seagal arrived at the venue at 6:47 in the evening. He entered through the East Corridor, not the performer's tunnel. He did not need a tunnel. He walked through the crowd the way a man walks through a space he believes was arranged for him. He was 38 years old, 6 feet 4 inches tall, 223 pounds, with the broad shoulders of a man who had spent the last 2 decades doing things to his body that most men read about and quietly set aside. He had earned a 7th degree black belt in Aikido. He had founded his own dojo in Osaka. He had trained with the Japanese national team for 11 months in 1979. He had done things on film sets that stunt coordinators still argued about in break rooms. In the 18 months prior to that February evening, his films had earned a combined $412 million at the domestic box office alone. He was, by any reasonable measurement of the word, formidable. His flaw was that he knew it. In the next 4 minutes in front of 18,000 people, he would do something that could not be undone. And in the 91 seconds that followed, with 3 precise movements and a silence that would spread across that arena like weather moving across open water, he would understand, perhaps for the first time, what he had done. Nobody in the forum that night knew they were about to witness something that would be retold in dojos and training rooms and quiet conversations for the next 30 years. Nobody knew that by the time the evening was over, the story would already be on its way to places its participants had never been. Steven Seagal had been building toward this moment without knowing it for approximately 6 years. That was how long Chuck Norris had been, in the private vocabulary of certain Hollywood circles, the name attached to a specific kind of unwanted comparison, a benchmark, a ceiling someone kept referring to when Seagal's name came up, a man who had done it first, a man whose face was on posters in rooms where Seagal was still being evaluated. Norris had by then won the middleweight karate championship of the world, a title he had held and defended in the era when holding it meant something different than it would come to mean later. He had trained personally under Bruce Lee for purposes that were not theatrical. He had fought in circuits where the referees sometimes did not stop things quickly enough, and the fighters learned to stop things themselves. He had retired from competitive fighting with a record that men who understood the record did not speak casually about. He was 50 years old. He wore a gray flannel shirt, untucked, dark canvas trousers, shoes built for walking, not for photography. He had arrived early and taken a seat in the 6th row on the floor level, on the western side of the arena, near the end of the aisle. He had a paper cup of coffee. He had not told the organizers he was coming. The exhibition ran through its first portion, without incident. Several demonstrations, some sparring. The crowd, experienced enough to recognize skill when it appeared in front of them, responded at the appropriate moments. Seagal performed twice. Both times the response from the floor was genuine and large. He moved with the particular authority of a man who has made peace with gravity, and the 18,000 people in the forum gave him what he had come for. It was during the intermission, the lights still up, the floor still clearing from a demonstration, that Seagal was handed a microphone. This was the moment, not the fight, the microphone. He began well enough. He thanked the foundation. He named a few people in the room. He said several things about service and sacrifice that were true and appropriately weighted. And then, in the way that certain men cannot resist a room when the room is full and the microphone is live and the edge is right there, he went past the edge. He said Chuck Norris's name. He said it was time for certain legends to acknowledge when their season had passed. He said something about the difference between a name built for another era and a name that belonged to the present moment. He said, with 18,000 people listening and the microphone still in his hand, that some fighters spent too long renting space in a reputation they had built before the rules changed. He did not say the words washed up. What he said was precise enough that the words were not necessary. The forum went quiet in the particular way large spaces go quiet when something unexpected has happened, and the crowd has not yet decided how to respond to it. Chuck Norris set his coffee cup down on the empty seat beside him. If you want to know what happened in the next 91 seconds, and what was said afterward in a voice that only one man in that arena could hear, stay with this. And if you are watching this channel for the first time, subscribe now, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Because what happened next is not the kind of thing that gets told in the right order very often. He did not stand immediately. He sat for a moment with his hands on his knees, not moving, with the specific stillness of a man who has already decided what he is going to do, and is simply allowing the decision to settle. A woman 3 seats away would describe it later as the stillness of something that has already happened, and is waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. Then, he stood. He removed his flannel shirt. He did not shake it out. He folded it once along the shoulder seam, set it across the back of his seat, and smoothed it with 2 fingers. The cap he had been wearing, a plain dark cap with no insignia, he placed on top of the folded shirt. He stepped into the aisle. The recognition moved through the floor seats first, the way these things always move. From the people who knew what they were seeing to the people who were still learning what they were seeing. A tournament director named Raymond Chu, seated in the 3rd row with credentials around his neck and 26 years of watching fights behind him, leaned forward with both elbows on his knees and did not move again for 11 minutes. A stunt coordinator named Frank Alcott, who had worked with Norris on 3 separate productions, reached for the arm of the woman beside him without looking at her. The recognition wave spread upward through the arena, row by row, section by section, in exactly the way a current moves through water that did not know it was going to be disturbed. He has already lost. He just does not know it yet. Seagal, still holding the microphone, processed what was happening with the measured expression of a man who has not yet recalibrated the room. He said something. The words were not audible in most of the arena. He set the microphone on the lip of the stage. He stepped down to the floor. There is a concept in every serious discipline of empty hand fighting that does not translate cleanly into the language of people who have not studied it. It concerns the management of space. A fight is not 2 bodies colliding. A fight is a negotiation about distance, who controls how much of it, who forces the other to cross it on unfavorable terms, who makes the first adjustment and what that adjustment reveals. Every technique thrown in the history of unarmed combat is an argument about where the bodies are in relation to each other. The man who controls the gap controls the outcome. Chuck Norris understood this the way a physician understands respiration, not as a theory but as a condition of the work. He stopped 11 feet from Seagal. He did not assume a stance. He stood the way he had been standing in the 6th row, weight distributed, hands relaxed at his sides, head level, eyes not moving. He waited with the patience of a man who has learned that waiting is itself a form of pressure. Seagal moved first. Second 1. He covered 4 feet with a forward step, right foot leading, and initiated with an Aikido entering motion, a lateral shift designed to redirect force before contact. It was technically sound. Against a less experienced opponent, it would have created the leverage it was designed to create. It found nothing. Norris moved left. Not away but along a 40-degree angle, the kind of angle that removes you from the line of force without removing you from the engagement. He did not block. He did not parry. He was simply no longer where the technique expected him to be. Raymond Chu in the 3rd row placed one hand flat on each knee and did not look at anything else for the remainder of the encounter. Second 7, Seagal reset and came again, this time with a combination entry. A grip attempt followed by a shoulder-level redirection. The grip found nothing, the redirection pressed against air. Norris had stepped back the precise distance required to make the technique long by 3 inches, which is to say useless. 3 inches is all the difference in the world. A boom operator named Gary Tellis, standing behind the stage equipment at the north end of the floor, set down the handheld unit he had been adjusting and stood still with his arms at his sides. He did not pick the unit up again until the encounter was over. Second 22. Seagal's third attempt was the most committed. He came forward with his full 223 pounds behind a forward entering throw, a technique that, correctly applied, removes a man from his feet before he has registered that the throw has begun. Norris received it the way a cliff receives a wave. He turned his right shoulder back a fraction, absorbed the forward pressure at an angle rather than a plane, and redirected the momentum not by stopping it, but by allowing it to complete itself in a direction Seagal had not chosen. There are men who train for 20 years to do what Norris did in that fraction of a second. Some of them never get there. Seagal was below his center of gravity. What happened next is the moment that witnesses would spend the following 3 decades attempting to describe to people who were not there. Norris had the angle and the position to end the exchange in any of 4 or 5 ways that would have made continuing impossible. He chose none of them. He assembled the finishing position. The right hand completing an arc that would have terminated against the left side of Seagal's jawline, and he stopped it. 1 inch. 1 inch from contact in front of 18,000 people, in the 3rd second of a silence so complete that the ventilation system in the upper rafters was audible from the floor. He held the position for 2 seconds. He extended his left hand. Open. Palm up. Frank Alcott, the stunt coordinator, released the arm of the woman beside him and sat back in his chair. Raymond Chu exhaled through his nose and looked at the floor. Gary Tellis at the north end picked up his equipment and went back to work, because there was nothing further to wait for. Outside on Century Boulevard, traffic continued in both directions. 400 yards to the northeast, a loading dock was running a night shift, and the sound of the machinery carried faintly in the February air, indifferent to what had happened inside the forum and what was still happening, the private part, the part that belonged only to the 2 men on the floor. Norris said something. He said it quietly enough that the people in the first row could not hear it. He said it once. He did not wait for a response before he turned and walked back toward the 6th row. What he said has been reported in 4 different versions over the years that followed, in 3 different publications and 1 interview given by a man who claims he was standing close enough to read the shape of it. Every version agrees on the length, 1 sentence. Every version agrees on the register, not contempt, not instruction. Something closer to a door left open. Seagal stood on the floor of the forum for a moment that witnesses estimated at between 8 and 12 seconds. 18,000 people were very quiet. He had a choice. Every man who is put into that position has a choice, and the choice is not complicated, but it is not easy either. You can acknowledge what has happened and accept what that acknowledgement costs you. Or you can find the version of events that allows you to leave the room intact, at least on the surface, knowing that the other version is already spreading through the people who were there. He nodded once. He walked off the floor toward the west corridor. The story left the forum that night the way these stories always leave, in pieces, carried by people who had seen different angles of it, who had heard different amounts of it, who remembered the silence with different levels of precision. Raymond Chu told it to 3 students the following Monday morning, in the middle of a technique demonstration. And he stopped the demonstration to tell it, which those students understood as a signal about the story's weight. Frank Alcott told it on a film set 6 weeks later, during a lunch break, to a group of 8 people, and by the end of that afternoon it had already changed shape twice in the retelling. Gary Tellis never told it publicly. He mentioned it once, years later, in a conversation about what stillness looks like in the body of someone who has made a permanent peace with what they are capable of. Chuck Norris did not tell it. He has never in any documented context told it. There exists 1 interview given in 1997, in which he was asked a question adjacent to that evening. And he answered the question that was asked rather than the one being implied, and the interviewer understood the distinction and moved on. The story persisted anyway. It grew and shrank and changed its details the way oral history always does, shedding the things that were harder to carry and gaining the things that made it easier to pass along. The number of witnesses varied in different retellings. The duration of the encounter changed. The private sentence acquired syllables it may or may not have had. What did not change, across 30 years of the story moving through gyms and film sets and the places where people who work in those worlds sit down and talk about the people who made them possible, was the image of the held position. 1 inch. 2 seconds. The open hand. That image did not require elaboration. It carried its own meaning. There is a thing that serious practitioners of any discipline eventually come to understand, and it is this: competence does not require an audience, but it sometimes finds one anyway. The men who have earned the quietest version of a reputation are the ones who do not carry it into rooms ahead of themselves. They arrive without announcement. They sit in the 6th row with a paper cup of coffee. They fold their shirt before they walk to the floor. What they know about themselves does not need to be stated, because the statement, when it eventually becomes necessary, is made in a language that has no words in it. The forum's west corridor was empty by the time the exhibition resumed. The 18,000 people in the arena went back to what the evening had originally been about, which was charity, which was service, which was the ordinary business of people gathering in large numbers to do something for other people. The lights were still on. The night was not yet over, but the story was already moving. It had been moving since the moment Norris set his coffee cup down on the empty seat beside him, before he had folded his shirt, before he had walked into the aisle. Some stories begin before they begin. In the second a man decides without rushing, without showing that he has decided. That is where the real fight is, every time.
Not in the technique, not in the contact, in the second, before all of it, in the stillness that most people in a room of 18,000 do not notice, because they are still looking at the man with the microphone.
Next week we are going to look at what happened in a private gym in 1986 when Chuck Norris walked into a room where Bruce Willis was being told he would never make it in action films. Stay with us for that one.